Hello everyone, I am AP Calculus, and yes, I did just use an old shut the fuck up phone. Okay, hello. That was certainly a way to enter a video, but yes, I did use another video sound effects to, yada 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 and do the intro. I'm ready on my second can of energy drink today, and I do not want to open a third to do just this intro. So, anyway, hello, I'm AP Calculus, and today I'm going to be reading the one shot Chuuya Nyah-kahara. I saw this one shot on Reddit and I absolutely fell in love with it. So, this is by constellationsinink, I think. Uh, anyway, here is a summary. Chuuya is transformed into a cat. Dazai is having the time of his life. I absolutely love this fic. It's amazing. It's like crack. It's just the best. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this, and let's get right into the fic. Shit. How did this happen? One moment, Chuuya was chasing a jewel thief at the docks. It should have been routine. With his gravity manipulation, he could handle almost any ability user. He followed her to a shabby little hut that looked like it could collapse at any moment. She was cornered now. No way out. Stealing from the Port Mafia was unforgivable, and Chuuya had to make that clear. He broke the door down without effort. Inside, he found her, but she wasn't alone. On a worn-out bed laid a man with stone grey eyes. The thief was at his side, no longer panicked. She even had the audacity to smile. Chuuya opened his mouth, ready to throw something sharp and cool, but no words came. His body trembled, the world blurred. He collapsed, unable to summon tainted sorrow. When he opened his eyes again, the hut was empty, but with both of them gone. He tried to stand, but something was wrong. No, everything was wrong. Panic clawed up his throat. He looked down. His gloved hands were gone. In their place were two tiny orange paws, covered in fur. His eyes were barely 20 centimeters above the ground, and worst of all, he had a tail. The man in the bed had been an ability user. Chuuya forced himself to take a few steps forward on his four legs. Instincts guided him, making it easier than it should have been. He tried to speak, but what came out was a sound so small and adorable that humiliation burned in his chest. His clothes were pulled on the floor, his hat lying among them. The collar around his neck hung loosely on his small body. Reluctantly, he turned to leave, but after a few steps he stopped, glanced back, and returned to the hut. Shoving his hat on to place, he balanced it awkwardly on his head. Inconvenient or not, he was not leaving it behind. Growling, he tried to summon Tainted Sorrow again. Nothing answered. He had no choice but to walk this long trek back on short legs. Where to, he didn't know yet. Who could he even approach like this? Who would recognize him? How could he get inside the Mafia headquarters as a fucking cat? Thought after thought piled up until the answer he didn't want to admit became unavoidable. Chuuya huffed in frustration, his oversized hat tipping forward by the movement. There was only one option. One person infuriating enough to make it even worse, but clever enough to help him. Which is why, at 2:30 in the morning, he ended up in front of Dazai's apartment. The walk there was a nightmare. Each step felt twice as long with his ridiculously short legs. He had to sneak through narrow alleys to avoid drawing attention, because an orange cat wearing a hat would definitely attract stares. The last thing he needed was some idiot scooping him up and dumping him at an animal shelter. That is how he ended up in a fight with a stray dog. The thing was big, ugly, and loud, all snarls and snapping teeth. Chuuya was certain it wanted him for dinner. He braced himself, claws out, but before he could leap, another cat exploded into the fight. It was a skinny, black stray, nothing but bones and fury, but it attacked with wild precision, claws raking, teeth sinking into the mutt's ear. The dog yelped and bolted down the street, tail between its legs. The black cat stopped, licked its paw with deliberate calm, and walked out without sparing Chuuya a glance. Stunned, Chuuya stood there in silence. What was the proper cat etiquette in a situation like this? Was he supposed to thank it somehow? He had no idea. So, with his pride in shreds and his hat still wobbling on his head, he turned back towards his goal. By the time he reached Darzo's apartment, he was worn out, hungry, and seething. He stared down at one of his paws, flexed his claws, and scratched the wooden door. When nothing happened, he rose to his hind legs and clawed harder. Desperate enough that meowing even crossed his mind. At last, the door cracked open a slither. A familiar face appeared in the gap, scanning the hallway for the source of the noise. Chuuya tilted his head, even farther than normal, and nudged his head up just enough to reveal his eyes. Darzo's gaze landed on him, and for once, the man's usually unreadable expression cracked. In the span of a heartbeat, it shifted from surprise to confusion to recognition to revelation and finally pure amusement. Mischief glittered in his eyes. He pulled the door wide open, inviting Chuuya in without a word. Chuuya stepped over the threshold and immediately regretted every choice that had led him here. The bastard wasn't even asleep. Still fully dressed, he stepped aside and let Chuuya in. Books and half-empty sake bottles littered the floor, though the place was otherwise surprisingly tidy. The orange cat strutted across the room with as much dignity as he could muster, under the weight of a too large hat. Crawling out from beneath it, he sat beside the low table, his collar drooping around his neck, as he fixed Darzo with a pointed stare. Darzo crouched down, studying him with intensity that made Chuuya's fur prickle. Wheels were certainly turning behind those sharp eyes. Any second now, the insults would begin. Instead, Darzo frowned. "You're hurt." Chuuya blinked, then glanced down at his right paw. A small cut ran across it. Blood smeared onto his fur. He must have stepped on glass on the way here. But he hadn't thought much of it. Normally, wounds like this healed fast. "I'll be back," Darzo said, unusually serious. When he returned, he was carrying antiseptic, gauze, and other supplies. He sat down, cross-legged, on the floor and held out his hand. "Paw." Chuuya growled, not very intimidating in this form, but he reluctantly placed his paw in Darzo's hand. "Finally, my dog's learnt some tricks." Darzo sighed dramatically. "But now he isn't even a dog anymore." He worked quickly and carefully, cleaning the wound and wrapping it with practiced ease. Chuuya tried not to flinch. For a wild moment, he thought that maybe Darzo's touch would nullify the ability and change him back, but nothing happened. The hope had been foolish to begin with. When the bandaging was done, Darzo carried the supplies back to the bathroom. His voice drifted out from behind the door. "Don't lick it." Chuuya froze, his paw already halfway to his mouth. Scowling, he dropped it. Darzo returned, amusement tugging at his lips. Chuuya, this must be a real predicament. I can't call you my dog anymore, but then again, I am very fond of cats. Should I be sad or delighted?" The murderous look Chuuya shot him should not have been possible for a creature this small. Unbothered, Darzo leaned down and patted his head. "You're cute, though." That earned him a hiss and two sharp scratches across the back of his hands. "Ah, da 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 da! Bad cat, Chuuya!" Darzo yelped, jerking his hand back. "Seems like someone needs a nap to get his temper under control." Chuuya was exhausted, yes, but more importantly, he was starving. Communication wasn't easy in this form, so he had to improvise. With a leap, he landed on the kitchen counter. "Hey, get down from there! That's unhygienic!" Darzo scolded, sounding scandaled. Chuuya ignored him and walked straight over to the stove, lifting his bandaged paw to point to it. Humiliation burned in the back of his throat. Reduced to begging for food from his worst enemy, how low had he sunk? Realization flicked across Darzo's face. Oh, the little kitten's hungry. He rummaged through the cabinets, muttering to himself. The fridge was nearly empty, the cupboards worse. At last, he found something in a drawer and frowned. Looks like I have to share my emergency ration with you. He pulled out a can of crab and opened it, placed it on a small plate. He also filled a bowl with water and set both on a low table. Sitting down beside it, he watched his Chuuya hop down, sniffed the plate suspiciously, then gave into his hunger. The canned crab smelled heavenly. Dazai's terrible taste for preserved food had always baffled Chuuya, but right now it was a feast. He braced his front paws and dug he braced on his front paws and dug in, devouring every bite. Once he was done, instinct took over him, and he began grooming himself with small rough licks of his tongue. Only he froze only when he realized Dazai was staring at him, wonder in his eyes. Fuck off! Chuuya tried to snarl, but all that came out was a soft meow. Dazai's grin widened, his laughter delighted. This really is the best day ever. Alright, time for bed. I'll bring you something to sleep on. When Dazai returned, he carried an armful of blankets. He arranged them on the floor in a heap, making a makeshift bed. There you go, he said. Your royal accommodations. Chuuya eyed it suspiciously, but he was too drained to complain. The trek from the docks had worn him out, and his eyelids were already heavy. He curled into the pile, grateful for the soft resting place, though his pride stung. Dazai gave a small nod, then disappeared into his own bedroom. He left the door open a crack, and soon the sound of him shifting restlessly in his futon reached Chuya's sensitive ears. Some things never changed. Dazai had always been a terrible sleeper. Chuuya tried to drift off, but it wasn't easy. The apartment was cold, and with his sharpened senses, every car that passed outside sounded like it was roaring through the living room. A steady patter of rain against the windows didn't help either. His thoughts spiraled. What if there was no way to undo this? What if he stayed like this forever? And why did Dazai care so much? The thunder crackled the sky open. Light flooded through the windows, followed by a deafening boom. Chuuya's fur shot up. His body reacted before his brain did. In the blink of an eye, he bolted down the hall and into Dazai's bedroom. Another thunderclap hit, closer this time. Chuuya scrambled into the futon and curled into a tight ball near Dazai's legs. Ridiculous, absolutely humiliating. He was Nyah-kahara Chuuya, the Port Mafia's strongest fighter, and a vessel of a literal god of calamity. He was not afraid of thunderstorms. And yet here he was, trembling beside Dazai's knees. The storm eventually lifted into a low rumble, leaving only the soft hiss of rain. Exhaustion finally claimed him, and he slipped into sleep, his body pressed tight against the warmth. Dazai woke up to the pale light of the morning. The first thing he saw was a small orange bundle curled against the back of his knees. For a long moment he watched. Then, gently, he reached down and scratched behind its ears. The cat stretched, letting out a tiny surr, and began to purr. Dazai's heart gave a dangerous lurch at the sound. The cuteness was almost unbearable. He had to remind himself, this was Chuuya, his old partner, his rival, and sworn enemy. Even so, the sight made his lips curl up into a smile before he forced himself to get up. When Dazai returned later that day, he froze in the doorway. His apartment looked like a battlefield. Books were scattered across the floor in haphazard piles. The carefully balanced stacks he built toppled without mercy. Several sake bottles laid shattered in sticky puddles. The curtains hung on in torn strips, and one of the cushions had been ripped apart, cotton spilling open like snow. Two bright blue eyes pierced at him from the top of the fridge, almost apologetically. Did you get the zoomies while I was gone? Darzai asked slowly. His voice was equal parts disbelief and amusement. Chuuya, my stuff. The orange cat leapt down with a feline grace and stalked towards him like he owned the place. Wait! Darzai's voice sharpened. Stay up there! There's glass shards everywhere! Chuuya froze for a moment. He thought he misheard. Darzai's tone wasn't mocking, but genuinely worried. Again. Chuuya shook himself and patted it forward anyway, refusing to acknowledge the warmth curling in his chest. Darzai sighed, rubbing his forehead. Alright, I'll clean this up. Then we'll talk. Well, I'll talk, you'll listen. Like the old times. Once he slept and scrubbed the place back into order, the apartment looked cleaner than it had in months, but Darzai had gone completely overboard. New toys dangled from strings near the bookshelves, a scratching post leaned against a wall, a pet bed that could only be described as luxurious was arranged in the corner. I'll leave the window cracked open so you can come and go, Darzai said matter-of-factly, 'cause I'm not cleaning a litter box for you. But don't go getting into trouble. And don't, his eyes gleamed with mischief, don't go knocking up any lady cats, or we'll have to make a trip to the vet. Chuuya swiped a paw at the counter, knocking over a half-finished mug of coffee. It hit the floor with a sharp crack. Damn it, Chuuya! Darzai exclaimed, crouching down to salvage the shards. That was my favourite mug! The little cat sat back, a fang barely pressed past his lip in what clearly resembled a smirk. After they had settled down at the low dining table, Darzai reported what he had found in his outing. So, I did some digging, by which I hacked into the Port Mafia network. Chuuya let out an enraged hiss, fur bristling. He made a mental note to have someone fortify the Mafia's firewall the moment he got back, probably involving some yelling at their tech division. And I found the ability user who can turn people into animals. Did they look something like this? Darzai slid over a thin folder onto the table. The man in it looked younger than Chuuya had remembered, but the particular colour of his eyes gave him away immediately. Chuuya gave the tiniest nod. Great, that means we have a trace. And by trace, Darzai clearly meant a full-blown plan with at least 20 contingencies, each branching off into 150 scenarios, and a simple brain teaser just before noon. He tapped the file. His name is George Orwell. Last known whereabouts already checked. I even picked up your clothes while I was there. Chuuya blinked, surprised. They also have clues about his accomplice. Darzai continued. Apparently his daughter is trying to scrap together money for his medical treatments. With her ties to the Mafia, it's turned into a crime of convenience. Chuuya's chest tightened. He knew how it was. On paper, Japan's universal healthcare looked flawless, but after the war, the system was a wreck. Too many gaps, too many people sliding through, and ability users were never the priority. Now, as for their location, Darzai frowned, stapling his fingers. Chuuya leaned forward, eyes narrowing. I have a theory, but if we spook them, they might vanish for good. Darzai's tone was slight, but the unknown consequences laid heavy. Chuuya's stomach dropped. I tried to call Rampo to keep it airtight, Darzai went on, but he never picks up on weekends, so we'll have to wait till Monday. 2 more days. Chuuya exhaled through his nose. He could survive that, probably, but it wasn't so bad. Humiliating, yes, but in a strange way, it felt like a vacation. He couldn't even remember the last time he had one of those. Darzai leaned back, grin returning. So, want to try the laser point in the meantime? Oh, I need to test whether cats are really afraid of cucumbers. Chuuya's fur puffed in outrage. 2 days. He had no idea how he was going to survive 2 days without ripping Darcy to shreds. The freaking laser pointer turned out to be fun. At first, Chuuya refused to even glance at it, but what Darcy lacked in work ethic, he made up for in mischievous energy. Again and again, the little red dot slipped into Chuuya's line of sight, darting across the floor, vanishing, reappearing, teasing him until his instincts finally won out. He bolted after it, a streak of orange across the living room. He didn't need tainted Sooooo to bounce off the walls and leap from furniture to furniture. It felt good, too good to admit, to let out all that restless energy. When Darcy was done giggling at his expense, Chuuya stomped into an empty cardboard box from his scratching post and curled up inside. That was enough indignity for one day. Sleep stole over him before he realized it. When he woke up, his hat had been draped across him like a blanket. Peeking out, the first thing he saw was Darcy's degrading grin and his phone. Bastard. Chuuya shot out of the box, hat tumbling off, and sank claws and teeth into Darcy's forearm. His fangs scraped uselessly against the thick bandages. Darcy only burst into laughter. Furious, Chuuya lets go and stormed off, slipping through the open window onto the fire escape. He climbed the ladder and settled on the roof. From there, the city spread beneath him, and bathed in a red glow of sunset. He thought about revenge. He also thought about gratitude. Despite himself, he wondered how he could ever repay both. A familiar beige trenchcoat appeared at his side. Darcy sat down beside him, quiet for once. Sorry, he said. I just wanted proof that this actually happened. No one would believe me anyway. I can delete them if you want. Chuuya huffed. It didn't matter. What unsettled him was the tone, the honesty that kept catching him off guard. He stole a glance at Darcy. The man's profile was outlined in the evening light, eyes reflecting the sun. They seemed sad. Softer than Chuuya remembered from their mafia days. To anyone else, Darcy might look unreadable, but to Chuuya, who had known him for too long, he saw every flicker, every mask, and right now, Darcy was an open book, and that book screamed loneliness. Don't worry, Chuuya, Darcy murmured. We'll find them, and if they won't turn you back voluntarily, I'll make 'em. For a heartbeat, his eyes darkened, a flash of the old demon prodigy breaking through. Chuuya's chest tightened. He didn't like it. Before he could second-guess himself, he nudged Darcy's arm with his head. Surprise cracked across Darcy's face, quickly replaced with joy. Hesitantly, he lifted a hand and scratched Chuuya between the ears. The rest of the weekend passed by much more peacefully. Monday came, and Darcy left for the agency, glancing back reluctantly. I'll be back before you know it. Just leave it to me and Rumpo, he mumbled as he slipped out the door. Chuuya only sat there, glaring as he watched him go. As expected, it took Rumpo barely 2 minutes to pinpoint the exact location of the ability user and his daughter. The real challenge was persuading him to actually take on the task. Rumpo had no interest in boring work, and Darcy had to promise to accompany him to ISM Japan, some massive sweets and snack expo in Tokyo in spring, and handle all the travel logistics in exchange. It was a small price to pay. Rumpo either already knew why Darcy was asking, or didn't care. Later, they sat together in the agency's meeting room, safely shielded from curious ears. The plan had to be airtight. You need to be fast, Rumpo said between bites of candy. And maybe use leverage. If he even has a second act, he could turn into a fly and vanish. Right. Dazai's fingers tapped the table. The question: can he undo the transformation remotely? Or would my touch be enough to nullify it? Rumpo skimmed the documents Dazai had gathered on George Orwell. There's no way to predict abilities perfectly, but most likely nullification will only stop him from using it in the moment. His ability does work remotely, but the range is unknown. My guess is that lifting the effect should work from anywhere, though. Rumpo's guesses were never guesses. They were facts. Satisfied, Dazai slid his chair back and headed towards Kunikita's desk. Stop slacking off and go to your own workspace. Kunikita grumbled without looking up, fingers still flying over the keyboard. Sorry to disappoint. You'd never do anything else. But I need the rest of the day off. A private matter. You never checked with me before. Just go and let me do my work in peace. Dazai sighed dramatically. Fine, but don't cry about missing me later. He slid off the desk and wandered off, quietly swiping Kunikita's car keys on the way. His partner didn't even notice. A short while later, Dazai emerged into traffic, driving in a way that nearly gave several pedestrians heart attacks. When Dazai reached the abandoned warehouse, he slipped through the dusty halls without a sound. He paused, listening. Faint whispers carried through the silence, and he was sure they belonged to his targets. Gun in hand, he pressed his ear to the door, mapping the voices, the angles, the likely positions. And then, without hesitation, he kicked the door open. In a blur, he closed the distance to the man, seizing his frail wrist and cutting off the gift in an instant. In his other hand, leveled the gun at his daughter, who froze, wide eyes, hands rising hopelessly. George Orwell was weaker than Dazai expected. Without his ability, he had nothing. Afternoon, Dazai drawled, a sharp smile tugging at his lips. Pleasure to meet you. We have a common acquaintance, you see. Short, ginger, fiery temper. His grin widened, and and that was before you turned him into a cat. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. I had to do something. I couldn't let him die. No one would help. The girl stammered, panic in her eyes. She had already realized her father couldn't protect her this time. The old man lowered his head in defeat. Listen. Dazai's tone was almost casual. I can respect defying the poor mafia. Really, I can. But you have to be smarter about it. He no longer found any danger from the two of them. Sliding his gun back into his pocket, he reached into his coat instead and produced a plain business card, holding it out between two fingers. The girl hesitated before taking it. Her eyes wide, the same strange grey as her father's, flickered up to meet his. Call this man. He'll be able to help you in more ways than one. I'll handle the mafia. They won't bother you again. Dazai's smile sharpened. But only if you change my partner back right now. Her father tensed. If you don't, Dazai tilted his head, studying them with a lazy amusement. Well, you can always try turning yourselves and your daughter into flies or something. But I think you've realized by now, your gift doesn't work on me. His hand slipped back to the gun. A single shot split the silence. The light bulb hanging above them by a good 5 meters, and well out of sight of Dazai's burst apart, showering sparks and glass as half the room fell into shadow. And I'm a pretty good shot. Dazai's eyes never left Orwell's paling face. The old man swallowed, trembling. Fine, I'll cancel Animal Farm. Darzai released his grip, but didn't lower the gun. With his free hand, he pulled out his phone and dialed. It rang 3 times. Slug? There was a pause. Then, on the other end of the line, a familiar voice rasped. You really did it, you damn mackerel. Darzai's heart stuttered before relief sank into his chest. For once, he was glad to hear his enemy's voice. Without another word, he hung up and slid the gun back into his coat for good. A thin smile curled across his lips. Pleasure doing business with you, he said lightly, turning on his heels. Wait, the girl called. She held up the card, eyes wide. Who is this? How can we trust him? Darzai didn't turn around. He's good at helping people. But aren't we criminals? She asked hesitantly. Technically, stealing something stolen shouldn't even count as a crime. His tone was careless, but his eyes were shadowed as he added, and his erased much worse past than yours. For a fleeting moment, his eyes flickered back to the way Taneda had scrubbed his own record clean. He'll help you find a hospital ring to help. Just trust him. And with that, Darzai walked away, hands in his pockets, already thinking about the slightly scratched-up car that he had to return. It was raining when Darzai left the agency for home. The sky was as grey as his mood. The dreaded returning to his apartment. Dreaded the silence waiting for them once he got there. Maybe he should go somewhere else. Where did people go when their own homes felt like less than a haven and more like a bus stop when nothing ever arrived? Friends, his colleagues from the agency would find it highly suspicious if he called and asked to hang out. A bar? Too many memories. Movies? He could predict the ending just by looking at the poster. So, he wound up at his own door anyways. With a sigh, he unlocked it and stepped inside. Just as he had expected, he was greeted with an empty apartment. He gathered the yarn balls and the toys scattered across the floor, tucking them into the cardboard box Chuuya used to hide in when he got particularly grumpy. Darzai couldn't quite bring himself to throw them away yet. Not yet. He put the leftover cat food, the kind Chuuya had flatly refused to eat since he'd only eat canned crab and nothing else, into the box as well. Maybe he could donate it to an animal shelter. Pouring himself a cup of sake, he closed his eyes, waiting for the burn to spread some warmth into his bones. Even in dry clothes, the cold still clung to him. He slumped onto the narrow couch, pulling the closest book into his hands. The words blurred and drifted through his mind without leaving meaning behind. One cup became 2, and his body staggered up towards uneasy sleep when the sharp buzz of the doorway jolted him away. The doorbell jolted him awake. Immediately on alert, he slipped his gun from the bedside table and padded silently to the front door. He cracked it open just enough to peer out, only to find the hallway empty. Lowering the gun, though still wary, he scanned for movement. A soft rustle caught his attention. His eyes landed on a cardboard box near the threshold. Cautiously, he lifted up one of the flaps. It wouldn't be the first time someone tried to gift wrap him a bomb. At first, it looked empty, but then a single green eye blinked up at him. Darzai opened the box fully. Inside was a scrawny black cat missing one eye. Slowly, he slipped his gun into his back pocket and lifted the box inside. Puzzle pieces clicked into place in his mind. His hand lingered around the door handle, grounding him. But he didn't need to turn around to know he was already in his kitchen. He always felt Chuuya's presence long before he saw him. Where did you find him? Darzai asked without looking back. In an alley, while I was, you know. Chuuya's voice carried the weight of the memory. It helped me fight off a stray dog. There was a pause. Darzai let go of the handle, unsure where any of this was leading. For someone who prided himself on being 10 steps ahead, the uncertainty was terrifying. Chuuya sat at the kitchen counter, tilted back in the chair, held at a precious angle by talented sorrow. His hat shadowed his eyes, but Chuuya caught a glint of blue beneath them. He reminded me of you, Chuuya added quietly. Darzai's gaze drifted to the black cat, now venturing out of the box to sniff the bookshelves as if it owned the place. He couldn't deny the resemblance. For obvious reasons, I can't keep him myself. Chuuya went on, his tone sharpening to mask the softness. But I thought, there's a useless mackerel with a sorry excuse for a job, no hobbies. He should have enough time to look after a cat. The creature ignored them both, pulling at the edge of a sake bottle. Darzai's mouth twitched, but he said nothing. Of course, I'd have to check in every now and then. Chuuya muttered, still avoiding his eyes. His hand brushed the faint scar on his palm, a reminder of the humiliating week. Make sure you're feeding him properly, since you can't even do that for yourself. The silence stretched, filled only by the sounds of rain against the windows. Darzai pulled open a can of crab from the cabinet, Chuuya's blue eyes glinting from under the brim of his hat as he watched. Kneeling, Darzai emptied the contents onto a plate. Drawn by the smell, the black cat patted over, sniffed and ate a few bites before leaving the most untouched. Chuuya huffed, like owner, like pet. Shut up, Darzai smirked, tapping his finger to the base of Chuuya's hair. Bastard! Chuuya yelped as his gravity control faded as the chair tilted, sending him tumbling to the floor. Darzai only laughed. Even insults, he thought, were better than silence. And with Chuuya around more often, silence wouldn't be as much of an issue from now on. Okay, I absolutely love this fic. That's the end of it, by the way. And also, this was requested by someone on Reddit, and I found that Reddit page, and then that led to here. Oh, and also, the author for this fic also drew the cover. I got in contact with them. They said I could use their drawing as the cover of this fic. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys liked the art because it's pretty cool artwork. Anyway, I don't have much else to say. My voice is a little bit froggy, but hey, I'm much better than I was a few days ago. Yay! Like seriously, no joke. Yesterday I slept for like 24 hours straight, 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. Not the same day. 2 a.m. What day was it? What day is it today? Okay, so 2 a.m. Monday morning, and I slept until 6 a.m. 6:45 a.m. this morning, the 2nd. And yesterday was the 1st. So yeah, fuck. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed yourself. I'll see you guys all later. Bye!